Ronaldo is welcomed at Al-Nassr, though somebody should remind him that he's not in South Africa. Meanwhile, his former employer, Manchester United, continue to shine in the Premier League with another victory as Newcastle hold Arsenal in yesterday's action. We talk Chelsea's big game against Man City. It's Graham Potter on thin ice. We also discuss transfer chatter, including Giroud to MLS, Moukoko to Barcelona, and much more. Happy New Year! I'm Luis Miguel Echegaray, LME for short. It's great to be back. Janusz, Michallik, my Polish-American prince. I have been working on my Polish already. Are you ready? Szczęśliwego Nowego Roku.
Likewise. Very good. Very good. Happy New Year to you as well.
I love it. And Mark Ogden. Oggy, I was in the UK over Christmas, but I didn't make it far enough to see you. I'm sorry, brother. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? And Happy New Year to all you guys as well.
I love it. Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to ESPN FC 2023. The discussion, the action, never stop.
I'm drinking Twinnings. Does that count? Because there's a lot of love about England, you too. So
Twinnings right here, Janusz, and then PG tips. It's like a fight, right, Augie?
I can't say. It's actually Yorkshire tea, and that's a Lancashire. But we're getting a bit too niche here, but yeah, definitely.
Let's get on with it.
I do love the England love. Let's begin with Cristiano Ronaldo per the intro, as he is welcomed to Al-Nassr. Of course, the jubilations, the celebrations, the commemorations of the Portuguese star heading to the Middle East, of course, and his new club. It was amazing scenes. So, Oggy, let's begin with you. What did you make of all that ruckus and his introduction and the press conference as well? Because for a second, though, he said he was in South Africa.
Yeah, it wasn't the best start, was it, to get the place wrong by about 6,000-7,000 miles? But he is where he is, and I think we have to accept that he's going to finish his career in Saudi Arabia. I've said before, I think it's a shame, but I did expect there to be a real kind of welcome for him because it's Cristiano Ronaldo. It's one of the biggest names in world football. He's a superstar, and Saudi Arabia's never seen anything like this in terms of football before. So I did expect that kind of showbiz element to it. When he plays his first game, I guess it'll be the same again. But I do think that once the kind of the novelty wears off for him and for Saudi Arabia, it will be like he's playing in a backwater. It'll be playing in front of stadiums that are half full because he will add spectators to stadiums, of course he will. But some of the teams in Saudi play massive stadiums. Now Al Hilal playing I think the stadium holds 60,000, and they never fill it. And you're not going to get 30,000 people suddenly turn up to watch Ronaldo. So it'll be strange for Ronaldo to have to play his final 2 years of his glittering career in stadiums which aren't full. I can't remember the last time he would have played a league game for anybody with an empty seat in the stadium, and that will happen in the next few weeks.
Janusz, he said he had offers throughout the world, actually. He said Europe, US, Australia. Did he make the right decision?
Look, I mean, for 200 million a year, I suppose he did. He says that, what did he say? That this country is unique because I'm a unique player. Well, he does love himself, doesn't he? I mean, we all do that, I suppose. Look, I mean, you have to take the money. I think in a way this, I don't know if I differ with Mark. I don't know for sure, but I think there will be people there. I think, being in Qatar, Mark, probably you saw the reaction. We saw the Saudi Arabia win against Argentina and people coming over to watch the national team play. I do think that even though, if it's just a novelty of Ronaldo being there, I think, I agree there's a bigger picture, right? They do want to have the World Cup. I think he's going to be the ambassador. That's what this contract is all about. And I think, they twisted his arm to get there. Now, 200 million is a lot of reasons, I suppose, but I think maybe he sees that as a bigger picture. I don't necessarily think that there were these great offers from everywhere, because if they were, he would have gone.
Okay, feel free to jump in here because we're gonna stick here with this Ronaldo chatter, because one thing that was very interesting to me regarding the press conference, and to Janusz's point, I feel that there was a little bit of embellishment. Obviously, we knew about how he was pretty much offered to the likes of Bayern Munich and Chelsea, and strategically it just wasn't going to work out. The modern game has evolved, of course. Watching Lionel Messi win the World Cup probably didn't help causes of what he, is thinking for himself in the next few years. So what are the expectations of Ronaldo in this new era, do you think? Not just with the club, but also just from an international perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, isn't it? From a football perspective, he could have, if he wanted a challenge, he should have gone to Brazil, America, Australia, all these places that he said he had offers, Portugal. debatable whether the offers were genuine, whether they were good enough, whether they could pay what he wanted. He's not gone for a challenge. He's not gone for a football challenge. He's gone almost, in some ways, in the way that Pele went to the US back in the 70s to the Cosmos to try and turn a football country into a huge football country and be the kind of the flag bearer for, or the face of the new wave of footballers. Now, I have been told that one key area of this is that in Saudi Arabia, that MBS, the Crown Prince, has identified that it's a very young population that has an obesity problem, and he wants to change that by introducing sport to the masses. And one way of doing that, they believe, is to get Cristiano Ronaldo in Saudi Arabia to kind of inspire the next generation of kids to be a footballer, to be like Ronaldo, to live like Ronaldo, to be fit, to look after your body. So from that perspective, that is a good thing. If Ronaldo can help, people in Saudi develop a healthier lifestyle and become more sportingly active, then that is a win. But I don't see how this move offers him any football satisfaction whatsoever. Al Hilal are Al-Nassr's big rivals. Al Hilal are the Real Madrid of Asian football. They're the reigning Champions League winners in Asia. They've won it more times than anybody else. So already the team on his doorstep is the biggest team. I guess in a football perspective, if Ronaldo can turn Al-Nassr into the Saudi champions, the Asian Champions League winners, then he'll have had a successful time there. But, if he said that he had offers from Brazil, I would have loved to see Ronaldo in Brazil, because what a way that would have been to go out, playing the home of Pele, playing the country that, is still regarded as the pinnacle of football, Brazil. Play there, see out your career by winning a title in Brazil. Don't go to Saudi Arabia and do it for the money, because that's what he's done.
Yeah, and look, you've mentioned Pele coming to America, and if Cristiano Ronaldo embraces, the situation in Saudi Arabia like Pele did in the United States, it's fair play. I mean, he can make a lot of changes, right? I mean, it's still very oppressive in Saudi Arabia, and he can go a long way maybe to make another legacy after football with that, because he's that sort of figure that millions and millions and millions and millions of people watch, and on social media and everywhere else. So he's got a unique opportunity there if he truly believes that that's what he's doing now as an ambassador. Maybe he can get in the ear of everybody there and maybe make some subtle changes and not just or subtle points, and maybe not just about obesity but everything else. So I would like to see that, and I'll give him benefit of the doubt. But when it comes to football, I think we all understand what this means. It's sort of like the Chinese league. Remember how much we were talking about, but we always knew we weren't going to watch it. When some of the big stars, maybe not as big as Ronaldo, have gone to China. Where are those clubs? Some of them don't even exist anymore. The Oscars and Hulks of the world, and maybe some other bigger names that have gone. That's how I see it. It's as simple as that. Does he have the right to do it? Absolutely. He's absolutely right, by the way, that he's done everything that he could in Europe for the most part. He's won everything, and that's true, by the way. And if somebody comes in and makes that offer, it's hard to refuse. But I'd like to see him in that role of an ambassador, but in the same way that Pele embraced it. And he's done a lot of good, Pele, in the United States, on and off the pitch. Let's see if Ronaldo maybe can do that.
Well, I'll tell you. Go ahead.
You mentioned earlier that he may become an ambassador for the World Cup bid in 2030, which would be an interesting challenge for Ronaldo, because obviously Spain and Portugal are one that they basically confirm UEFA bid. Now, would Ronaldo go against his own country, the country that he led to the Euros? He's been a very proud Portuguese player. He gives everything for Portugal, and I don't think we could ever question his commitment to Portugal. But I think that would be very damaging for Ronaldo if he decided to front a Saudi Arabian World Cup bid, which could win the World Cup for Saudi Arabia ahead of Portugal. I think that would be a very dangerous move. So it'd be interesting to find out the detail of that, because I don't think he could do that and have, would it tarnish his reputation in Portugal? What he's done on the pitch will never be changed, but I think it wouldn't go down well if he suddenly led a bid which denied Portugal getting a World Cup.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. For 200 million, he better be going to every single school and cooking everybody's meals for that much money if he's going to help out the community there. But absolutely right. The key thing is what involves this lucrative contract and the future for Cristiano Ronaldo in, of course, the Middle East. Let's move on, because Ronaldo's former employer, Janusz Michallik's Manchester United, are flying. They have been doing fantastic since the return of action after the World Cup. They've won every match, including the League Cup. They haven't conceded a goal. I believe it's 6 multiple goal scorers as well, and they are pushing for the Champions League spot. What do you like of Erik ten Hag's Manchester United, Janusz Michallik? How are they looking?
Well, I think Mark and I have talked about it in the last show. I mean, I like everything about it. They finally have a leader of the pitch that's taking care of the entire club. Almost seems overnight with the decisions with Cristiano Ronaldo, and even Marcus Rashford, who's obviously continues to pay back, and he did it once again. So I mean, it's a tremendous role that they're on right now. I think you're going to see the benefits of that going forward. We saw a game that I felt, I think, just as everybody else, that it was going to be no problem. And it's not just him, but the leadership on the pitch as well. And we've seen it from Luke Shaw. How good was he? Played center back in the last two games, went to left back, scored a goal, had a wonderful assist on the third one, which was just absolutely outstanding. The Marcus Rashford goal I'm talking about, and of course they have a general in the center of the pitch that's maybe just as big of a reason as Ten Hag, and that's Casemiro, because what he's doing is exactly what a club like Manchester United needed. I don't really want to compare him to Roy Keane's of the world, but I think it's important to say that a figure like that was absolutely missing for Manchester United. So they have a general on the bench, and they have a general on the pitch in the center of the midfield, and things are looking good, and I don't think they're going to change. I'm not saying that Manchester United are going to win every game from now on. But I think what's happening right now is they're laying a foundation for Manchester United once again to challenge for the Premier League title.
Augie. For so long, some of us have been saying, it's about diversifying and, embellishing what Erik ten Hag brings. And when you remove a big headache, I'm not even going to say the name because it's already been happening, suddenly things are clicking. Manchester United, to Janusz's point, are really delivering from all angles, from all, leadership is multidimensional with this club. What's the realistic expectation for you now with Manchester United as they are right now in the Champions League spot?
Well, the next two league games, Man City at home, Arsenal away. That is massive. That will, for me, that will define what happens between now and the end of the season. Because if they win those two games, then United have got a chance of winning the title. And I never thought I'd be saying that at all this season, because certainly after the first two games when they were in the relegation zone. So Erik ten Hag has come in and he's made so many changes to the team, to the tactics, to the mentality. And I think we talked about, Casemiro. It's Christian Eriksen. It's Casemiro. It's Raphael Varane. It's these players that now are leaders in the dressing room. And I think not only leaders, but the people, they don't have to lead by shouting and being working. They lead by example. And I think it's showing now. There's a trust that Lisandro Martinez, another player, that people look at these players and they just know there's an assurance about them and a confidence, and it's seeping through the team. Now, the United games coming up, I just mentioned City and Arsenal, they're huge games because people say, well, look at United's results over Christmas. They've beaten teams they should beat. That's true. But last season, they weren't beating those teams. You couldn't trust Man United to beat any team. Now you trust them to take these games on and win. So, and that is a step that you don't now think that United are going to drop points. But whether you trust them to beat the teams like City and Arsenal is a different matter, especially Arsenal away. Now, they are the only team to beat Arsenal this season, let's not forget. So, can United win the league? Probably not this season, but I think they're going to finish third. And I think that the battle for fourth is probably between Newcastle and Liverpool. But the fact that Ten Hag has got United in contention for the top four after the disastrous start they made is a testament to his qualities as a coach, and also shows you how much time they wasted with Ralph Rangnick and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. 3 years maybe, just totally wasted, drifting along because the club had become too nice, too soft. As Luke Shaw said at the weekend, Ten Hag has come in and he stopped players getting away with things he shouldn't be getting away with. The culture at the club had gone absolutely way too far. Players were taking time off. They were going to physios all over the world. Ten Hag has come in, he stopped all that. He's the boss. They do what he says, step out of line, and you're in trouble. And it's just made a massive difference.
Janusz, agree. Final point on United. How high do you see them ending?
Well, I mean, as Mark had said, I mean, if the results go, I mean, there's a weakness about just about everybody a little bit. And, maybe, we're going to talk about Arsenal and Newcastle. I don't necessarily think they've shown that weakness just yet, but it's not impossible. As we've been talking, for Arsenal, look at their schedule. This is a defining moment. A whole month. I don't know who put that schedule together and how they knew it. But I think if you look at everybody's next 3 or 4 games, for the most part, they're incredible. I think that's where win the title. I don't know if it's going to be decided, but I think we're going to get a clearer picture, because already, if you look at the top four, I think, they're kind of sort of pulling away. It's not enough for us to say that this is a top four, because I agree. I mean, I'd have to imagine that Liverpool is going to make a little bit of a run, but there are 5 points difference there. Spurs are starting to fall apart just a little bit, and that changes the psychology of it all. Psychology is super important, and that's what you're dealing with Manchester United, because yes, I mean, that there's no coincidence that teams that have unbelievable leaders win titles, and Jurgen Klopp's been doing a great job at Liverpool. You see Arteta, which is no surprise. You see Pep Guardiola, and that's the only thing that Manchester United were missing, because they had ingredients to do that. And maybe I think that Casemiro may have been a final piece too as well, but certainly first and foremost it's Ten Hag.
It all begins with culture, and Erik ten Hag is proving that very much so. Quickly, regarding yesterday's action, by the way, Arsenal were held by Newcastle 0-0. We'll talk about them in a second. Everton, we'll talk about them as well. Lost to Brighton big time as well. And Fulham, Mitrovic just keeps Mitrovicing. Incredible, as they beat Leicester City, who are in trouble. But let's go back, Oggy, to Arsenal and Newcastle. I mean, listen, obviously we saw the fiery reaction from Miguel Arteta towards the end, claiming it was a penalty with that inadvertent handball. But you cannot deny just how tough Newcastle were to break down. Sven Botman, one of the transfers of the season, I think. But what do you make of this game as Arsenal were held 0-0 to Newcastle United?
Yeah, I was at the game last night. In the first 20 minutes, I thought Arsenal are going to blow them away. They were fantastic. But then Arteta started to lose the plot on the touchline. He got, he was facing off with the fourth official, and it transmitted to the players. And the players started to lose the plot on the pitch. They picked up 3 bookings in quick succession. And Newcastle realised that they'd suddenly got under Arsenal's skin, and they were able to frustrate them. And it seeped into the crowd. And it was, Arteta really needs to look at himself the way he was acting on the touchline. I just think that he needs to show more calmness, because it's only January, the first week in January. The pressure of the title race usually comes in April or May. He can't start feeling it now. He's got to start calming down a little bit and transmitting that calm to the players, because they're a good team, but I think they're an inexperienced team. I think last night showed that they do lack people that have been down the track before, that have actually won a title. They've got some great young players, but they kind of run out of ideas. Newcastle made it fairly obvious what they were going to do. They were just sitting deep, breaking on the counter-attack. And Arsenal had the same approach time after time after time. Give it to Saka, give it to Martinelli, try and do it that way. And Newcastle, fantastic, considering the work that Eddie Howe's done. This time last year, they were second bottom. He's got them really organised. They're a really good team now. They do lack a bit of a cutting edge. But for me, Arsenal, I think last night, if I was an Arsenal fan, I wouldn't have been getting carried away just yet about winning the title. But I think even though they've got a decent lead at the top of the table, I'd be a little bit concerned that the jitters have already started, and it's too early for that. If the jitters have started now, then what they're going to be like in April, May, when the tension really starts to bite.
I hear you, but if I were Arsenal fan, I'd be happy, because neither team has failed. These are the top two defensive teams in the league, right? I mean, are we really? And I know why, because they're top. But what are we expecting? Arsenal to win every game from now on? I mean, they play against a Newcastle team that conceded 11 goals, as you've said. Defensively, I mean, great. Everybody. I mean, Trippier, incredible. Yeah, he was wasting time, and he was an instigator in a lot of the things that Mark had said, that Arsenal didn't react to it very well. He's experienced. He's been under Diego Simeone at Atletico Madrid. He's learned things, right? And maybe they did get under the skin with fouls and wasting time. Fair play, and Arsenal maybe has to learn how to deal with that. But I think they attacked until the last moment. I mean, they showed that they're maybe not absolutely ready, but what's wrong with that? That's a point against a very good Newcastle side that conceded 11 goals this season. Arsenal are second, I think, with 14. So let's not forget, this is an Arsenal team that in the last 3 years finished, what, 8th and 5th? And now we're almost, and it's not coming from you, Mark, but it's, when I'm reading, everybody and all the media, all the articles, it's like, oh my goodness, what happened to Arsenal? They played a very good game. I mean, was it perfect? No. Did Newcastle find a way to take Martinelli out of the game and Saka to some degree? Absolutely. I think this game, if anything, showed how much they missed Gabriel Jesus, because in a game like this, he would have been the player with his mobility and ability to stretch defenses and maybe take players out of position. The players like Botman and Fabian Schär, who I actually thought it was even better than Botman yesterday. Absolutely. It showed that Eddie Nketiah is not at that level just yet. But overall, I mean, it's a good point for an Arsenal team that would try to attack Newcastle. In the beginning, they got lost a little bit in the middle, and then in the end came very, very close. Attitude and culture is good, and you know what? You take a point against an opponent like this.
We'll
I
have to
think
wait.
that's a really good.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Ollie.
Oliver. Just want to make the point. I think, like Janusz said, it wasn't perfect last night, and that is a really good point in the sense that I think because Arsenal had won 7 games at home prior to that, I think the fans were beginning to expect perfection. I think we're in that modern world now where everything has to be either fantastic or really bad. And Arsenal last night weren't fantastic. They weren't really bad. It was a gritty game. It was one of those games that you get in a title race where not everything goes your way. And I think maybe the crowd has to relearn that back in the day when they used to win titles under Arsene Wenger, there were games that would come along that were difficult and frustrating. It can't be perfect. And the season has gone so well for Arsenal that maybe it is a learning process on and off the pitch in that some games are going to be tough and some games you have to be patient because they have got a lot of talent, but it is going to get harder from now on. So you can't be panicking, was probably too strong, but Arteta was beginning to, panic at times.
And just quickly, what the game showed, some of the deficiencies. I mentioned Gabriel Jesus, but I think in terms of fullbacks, and I've seen that. I've worried about Arsenal fullbacks for a while now because, Newcastle did a great job on Martinelli and Saka, but normally great teams have others that come in and put them under pressure because you saw what Arsenal were doing, doubling down with, Almiron and Joelinton coming in at times. It was Willock and Sean Longstaff who were helping them. But if you had fullbacks, if Arsenal had fullbacks that truly had the quality to attack in this sort of a game, then I think that would take pressure away. And look, Zinchenko in general has been good. He wasn't good yesterday. He didn't have a good game. If you look at Ben White, we all know that he's not a fullback, right? And even Tomiyasu when he comes in, I mean, he's a center back. That's where he plays for Japan. I mean, he can play on the right and left. But when you think of attacking fullbacks who can help you, you don't think of White and you don't think of Tomiyasu and probably Zinchenko. And they also have Tierney, but I don't know if he's ready. He's too jittery for me as well. So I think they do need some help as they build and as they progress. But yesterday, I think fullbacks needed to do a lot more, and I think that would have caused Newcastle more problems.
Arteta has already said how January will be a place where they look. Joao Felix remains in conversation. We'll have to wait and see in terms of how they build in January. But many things can be true from both Oggy and Janusz. It's a very good Arsenal side who were fighting against a very resilient, up-and-coming Newcastle side. Very many things can be true. We'll have to wait and see how it develops. Let's quickly just discuss some other topics, including the aforementioned Everton, by the way, Mark Ogden. I mean, they really did not look good. It's been horrible. I believe Everton have not won since October 22nd in the league. Frank Lampard continues to struggle. It's not just about him, but the Toffees are not looking good. What do you make of them and putting themselves into a conversation of relegation fodder? What do you make of it?
Everton is the same old story every 6 months, isn't it? They lurch from optimism to crisis quicker than any club I can think of in the Premier League. And the next Premier League game is Southampton, which is going to be massive because Southampton look to me like they're cut adrift. And if they can get something against Everton, then Everton are really dragged into it. So, I think Lampard's future is definitely on the line. I think they've got Man United in the FA Cup on Friday away from home. You don't really see them getting anything from that. Now, you could argue that Frank Lampard, is he up to the job? I don't know. He's had 3 jobs in football now, all very much short-term jobs. Derby had a year there, got the Chelsea job too soon. Had a decent year at Chelsea, didn't sustain it. 18 months gone. Everton's a really, really big club, really big job, and it's going the same way as it always goes in January. They're losing touch with everybody above them. So I can see Lampard being out of a job very quickly. If they lose well at United on Friday, that could be it. And it's a shame, but you have to think of Everton. Everton constantly do this chopping and changing. It's been Lampard, it's been Benitez, it's been Allardyce, it's been Silva. I mean, Ronald Koeman, Martinez, all these managers in the last few years. It's scary, and they keep repeating the same mistakes. The recruitment has been poor. I think it was better last summer. I think they made good signings with Marco and Conor Cody, but the quality isn't there. Now, where do you go with this one? I think Lampard needs a big result quickly. I don't see him getting it United. Then if he's still around for Southampton, he has to win that game. But some of the goals last night, I mean, the Pascal Gross goal was the back pass from Idrissa Gueye, absolutely amateurish. And that's what Everton have got at the moment, just mistakes all over the pitch.
Yeah, where do you start with that? You're quite right. I mean, 6 managers in 6 years since Farhad Moshiri has been the owner of that team. I don't know if another change makes a difference, but here we are. We were just talking about the difference a good leader makes. I don't know if Lampard is that leader. I really don't. I mean, I've said it even when they had that bounce. They didn't start well, right? And they had a little bit of a bounce, and we started to actually talk. I remember a little bit. Maybe Frank Lampard is getting his arms around this team, and that we see that we don't. But I've yet to identify the way how they play and what they do and what their style is. Are they a good defensive team, or do they have patterns to attack? And I don't see it. And just before the World Cup, remember, I think they were beaten easily by Bournemouth. I don't know if Bournemouth has won a game since then. And then you have 44 days or 45 days to maybe have the chance to train whoever is left, to come up with something to make your team more resilient, even if it's just mentally. And here we are. You'd like to think, I mean, the first game after the World Cup, they lost, right? Can't remember to whom. Then they get a result against Manchester City. You would like to think that you're going to build on that, right? Because you've lost at home before that. You come home and you get embarrassed like this after you had 44 days to find some sort of a way, even if it's just talking with the board, even if it's talking to the players that are there. 3 goals in 5 minutes. You've mentioned that goal from, I mean, absolutely embarrassing. And you know what? The young players yesterday got beaten all ends up. Really, Michallik on one side and Patterson on the other made some mistake. But for the likes of Cody and Tarkowski, I mean, remember what was Tarkowski trying to do? Stop the ball with his head? It was like Phil Jones situation from I don't know how long ago, right? I mean, those are two very, very experienced players. And for the most part, they've been okay, actually. I didn't think they were absolutely terrible. But you need leaders in a game like this at home. So look, I don't think it's just on Frank Lampard. Obviously, there's issues at the board level, and this can continue. But I don't know how Lampard survives this, because I just don't think. Yesterday, I look at that, and it was a total capitulation by his team.
There is an issue. Sorry, Janusz. There's an issue at Everton. There's an issue at Everton right now in the sense that obviously their majority shareholder, Alisher Usmanov, is in the same situation as Roman Abramovich at Chelsea. So Everton's situation is difficult with the fact that they haven't got the financial strength they had maybe a year, 2 years ago to make changes. They let Richarlison go in the summer. They replaced him with Neil Maupay. That was just a bad transfer. Dominic Calvert-Lewin's been injured, most of the season, so they've missed him. And maybe they haven't got the finances to get rid of Lampard and bring somebody else in. Maybe they're going to have to stick with Lampard because they can't make change in the transfer market this month, really. And if they're going to appoint a manager, who are they going to go for? Now, the people that are available, Sean Dyche is available, but I don't suppose the Everton fans would take to him because it's Sean Dyche, but he'd probably do a good job. Beyond that, they're not going to get Pochettino. They're not getting Luis Enrique or Thomas Tuchel. So, do they stick with what they've got, or do they make a gamble? Everton at some point have got to stop making changes and stop wasting money, because they've got a new stadium to pay for in the next 2 or 3 years. And that, again, they don't want to be in that stadium in the Championship, but the way things are going, they might be.
1 point above relegation. Let's quickly move, because we have only a few minutes left, including transfer chatter. But very quickly, boys, Chelsea against Manchester City. Manchester City will probably try and take advantage of the fact that Arsenal drew against Newcastle. Chelsea in 10th place. Todd Bowley coming in, obviously not very happy right now. Graham Potter on thin ice. Janusz Michallik, what is going on? How big is this game for Chelsea?
I mean, it's massive, obviously, but I don't think anything's going to happen to Graham Potter, at least not for now. I mean, both teams are coming off disappointing results, right? Chelsea was at Forest. They drew against Forest, and City against Everton, as I've mentioned. And before that, they lost at home to I forgot, Brentford, right? One of those big teams. I can't remember. But look, they got to bounce. I think there's an opportunity with Arsenal dropping points. I think you're going to see a Manchester City team maybe change a little bit. They do have you normally say they have an issue at center back, but we've seen that they have 4 very good ones. But no Ruben Dias, which we knew. I think Laporte is out as well. But Akanji can play there, and John Stones as well. I think we're going to see a return of Kyle Walker because Rico Lewis is good, but not for a game like this. I think that's where you go with the veterans. Cancelo's going to be on the other side, and I think you're going to see Manchester City at their absolute best because they understand. And I think as a team also that will recognize that there's an opportunity here to go closer and maybe get rid of some other rivals as well. So I think Manchester City are favorites in this one because I still don't know what I'm going to get from Chelsea. We've been here before. We're going to be here again. Trouble scoring goals defensively. It's a total rebuild as well.
Augie,
Yeah,
thoughts?
yeah. I mean, I think for Graham Potter, it's a nightmare scenario, isn't it? The next two games, Man City at home, Man City away in the FA Cup. And I think I don't think he's under any immediate pressure because Todd Bowley has made it clear that this guy is there for the long term. Now, long term, I wouldn't buy that. I think if they don't qualify for the Champions League or win something, then the summer's going to be a real kind of a judgment day for Graham Potter. But right now, I think he's okay. I think what the problem will be against City on Thursday is that if they lose that game at Stamford Bridge, the fans could turn. There is a bit of a growing kind of sentiment against Potter amongst the Chelsea fans. They didn't want Thomas Tuchel to be sacked. They liked Thomas Tuchel, and Graham Potter's come in, and the Chelsea fans haven't really taken to him. They don't think that he's brought anything new to the team. They don't like how he talks at times. He talks the club down, talks ambitions down a little bit, talks about a transitional he says quite negative things, and football fans don't like to hear the manager talking things down. So if Chelsea don't win tomorrow night or lose, I think Stamford Bridge could be quite difficult at the end of the game. And if the fans turn, that's when the manager starts to have a problem with the owners. So, it's a massive, massive game. It's a bigger game tomorrow than it is on Sunday, even though they'll be at the FA Cup, I think, on Sunday. I think what happens on Thursday is a much, much bigger game.
Speaking of Chelsea, staying with Chelsea, Todd Bowley is trying to react in the transfer market. Hearing reports, of course, of Enzo Fernandez, the Argentinian World Cup champion, for a ridiculous amount of 127 million euros. But also, Mark Ogden, what's the latest on 90s boy band lookalike Michallik, the Ukrainian player? Because I believe there were other clubs interested. Manchester United, I was hearing, Arsenal as well. Chelsea closing in?
Well, Arsenal are definitely interested. We know that they've had two bids now for Mudryk, and the first bid was rejected. The second bid, I think it will be rejected because there's quite a big gap. There's about a £20 million gap between Shakhtar's valuation and what Arsenal are prepared to pay. Now, last night, I spoke to somebody at Shakhtar, and they said that Chelsea have been registered an interest, and they're going to speak to Dario Serna, who is the director of football at Shakhtar this week. So Chelsea are in, and they're unpredictable right now, Chelsea, because it could be Chelsea just trying to put a bit of pressure on Arsenal, trying to make life difficult for Arsenal. But it could be, with the way that Chelsea is spending money, they might be thinking, let's buy somebody else. Because, Enzo Fernandez, like you say, great player, but that is a lot of money for a guy that's only been in top-level football, any standard for 2 or 3 years. And Mudryk, how many forwards do they need? He's a good player, Mudryk, but he's young and he's unproven. But, they've got Pulisic, they've got Mount, they've got Havertz, they've got Ziyech. So there's so many that I can't even remember. I mean, where are they going to all play? When are they going to start selling players to bring some money in? So if I'm Graham Potter stuck in the middle of this thinking, my owner's playing fantasy football here with all these players that, great players, but do they actually need these players? Are they not better making strategic signings that, looking for a bargain? Well, they just seem to be throwing money at everything.
Well, go ahead, Janusz.
No, absolutely agree. I think, Mudryk, if it's for Chelsea or if it's for Arsenal, that's not for now. That's for the future, right? At Arsenal, I mean, they have a younger squad and they give the opportunities to younger players. He would be challenging Martinelli on that left-hand side because that's his position. So I suppose it's always good to have that just in case something happens. But I don't think he's the sort of player that's going to say Chelsea even more, the position they're in, which is not as good as Arsenal. I don't think he changes anything. Look, I don't profess to watch Mudryk week in and week out because we all know obviously what the situation is in Ukraine. I mean, we do see him quite often in the Champions League, and he's been impressive. But I still don't think that he solves the biggest problems of Chelsea Football Club, which is scoring goals and have some sort of a stability on both ends of the pitch. So I think that's one for the future, not for now.
The biggest issue for Chelsea right now, of course, is Todd Bowley and how much he's willing to spend or to overspend. Todd Bowley seems to me like that high school kid back in school, the really rich one that just wanted to have house parties so everybody would like him. I really feel that that's what Bowley's doing with Chelsea. But let's move on. Hey, Janusz, Michallik, Weston McKennie. Juventus's Weston McKennie, USMNT's Weston McKennie is attracting a lot of attention, including Unai Emery's Aston Villa as well. Where do you see McKennie going or staying? Where would you like to see him? Because there's a lot of interest from Premier League clubs, European as well.
Well, I mean, I think obviously if Juventus didn't have the issue, I don't think Michallik would necessarily want him out. I could be wrong here, but I think he's been playing well for Juventus. We know the situation, and from what we hear, he has to go. There's been talk about Bournemouth. I don't know if you change Juventus for Bournemouth. So I think if I were Weston McKennie, that probably would be a non-starter for me. Villa under Unai Emery. Obviously, unique competition, and Unai Emery's been doing a pretty good job. I think he's won 3 out of the 4 games that he's been there so far. I mean, in that position, because you can play Weston McKennie everywhere in the midfield. And Unai Emery playing 4-4-2, you can play him centrally, but as we know with Juventus, he can play in a wider position as well, both on the left or right. Maybe not ideal, but that's he has played for Juventus in those positions. Boubacar Kamara has been playing well. That's the number 6 that, McKennie maybe not perfect for that. Douglas Luiz has been playing well, but you need competition. So I can see that. I actually think that, maybe Newcastle United would be the best, because I mean the way they play, I could see him playing either centrally or in the position where who am I thinking? Joe Willock and Sean Longstaff are playing. That's almost a perfect system, and the sort of player that I think would help Newcastle more than any other club that I can think of right now. He's got the experience as well. He had a pretty decent World Cup. That would also allow, having somebody like McKennie there would allow Bruno Guimaraes to play a little bit higher, because that's where he's at his best. And right now, when we watch Newcastle, he plays very, very deep because he has to.
Unai Emery also enjoys the 4-2-3-1. He could be a good competition for McGinn, although I do prefer Yunus Musa. We'll have to wait and see. We're going to end it with sexy man, France's all-time scorer, Olivier Giroud, who is reportedly, saying no to AC Milan, looking elsewhere. And apparently, Janusz and Augie, I want your opinion after this as well. Apparently, MLS, per our very own Taylor Twellman, is saying he's getting a lot of interest there. Look, let me just say this. It all depends on how sexy your city is. That really is all about Olivier Giroud. But what do you make of this, Janusz? Giroud, possibly to MLS. What do you think?
Well, if he wants to change the scenery, right, towards the end of his career, why not? I think it's certainly an option for him. I think if I look at Giroud, I watched him a little bit today. Milan already played this morning. I don't know how it finished, was 2-0. Rafael Leao, by the way, who's being talked about by many Premier League clubs, scored a goal as well today. But Giroud looked good. I think we all watched him for Friends, where he had a very, very good World Cup, 4 goals there, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he's ready to leave Europe just yet. I'm not sure if he's ready to leave Milan. Milan are second in Serie A. And if anything, the rumor about Manchester United makes a lot of sense to me, because that's a position. And at the moment, for now, this is not long-term, obviously, because of his age, but I think he's the sort of player that Manchester United could use. And I'm sure, maybe without admitting, the likes of Arsenal and even Chelsea with their worries would say, you know what? Wouldn't be bad to have him for 6 months or 8 months or a year. So I don't know. I think he stays in Europe.
Augie, quick on that. Maybe Giroud to Manchester United?
Is that a rumor that I started on this show maybe a week or 2 ago?
I
was asked.
Well, have I don't know.
Yeah, I was asked who I thought would be a good signing. I said Olivier Giroud. No, I mean I've not heard that United are in for him, but I think it'd be a great signing, because what they need is a centre forward. They need a number 9, and I think, listen, not many players get better as they get older, and Olivier Giroud has become a much better player in his 30s. For me, he's certainly got certainly got a couple of years left in Europe. He's got power, he's got height, he's got finishing ability, and he's quicker than people think. People think he's slow. He's not. When he gets motoring, he's quick. So, listen, if I'm Man United, I need a loan signing to the end of the season, somebody that's going to score goals to get me into the Champions League. I'd take Giroud all day long, but I've not heard that he's on their list. But he's certainly not ready for MLS in the sense that he's got unfinished business in Europe. I don't want to denigrate MLS, because there's some very good players there, but I do think if he goes to MLS, he could be thinking, I could have stayed in Europe and achieved something for the next 18 months. Manchester
United would be a perfect fit in terms of Ten Hag's system. I tell you who is a perfect fit. Mark Ogden, Janusz Michallik, thank you so much. ESPN FC. Don't forget, by the way, that we are back on Friday as well with another massive episode with lots of content. Luis Miguel Echegaray, LME, ESPN FC saying goodbye. We will see you next time. Till then.